I expect you will hear from some detectives from Jacksonville who knew a lot of these people, had been researching a lot of these people involved, and they were on their radar because they knew there was violence taking place between these different groups, these gangs in Jacksonville. And I expect every one of them that you may hear from this week, I'm going to ask them, have you ever heard of Sean Guthright? And every one of them is going to say no. I had no idea who Sean Guthright was until Tampa police contacted us. These are people who are investigating all of the players allegedly involved. They have no idea who Sean Guthright is. People who were with Charles Jones the night of the shooting, you heard about several of them, several people who unfortunately were shot themselves and survived. None of them know who Sean Guthright is. I expect that's what you're going to hear this week. Other people who were in Charles Jones' entourage that you may hear from, I expect none of them are going to know who Sean Guthright is. It's a piece that simply doesn't fit into the puzzle. Some things you will hear, I expect, over the course of these next couple of weeks. The weekend that Charles Jones was having the show here in Tampa, Mr. Guthright's sister was having a birthday party in Orlando. And you will hear that he was friends with Isaiah Chance. He had met Chance, I believe, through his older sister. They weren't particularly close, but they had developed a friendship for a short time prior to this happening. But he has really no connection between either of the other two defendants in the case, or I think you'll see really anyone else that you're going to hear about in the next couple of weeks. But in any event, yes, he does. He travels down here with plans to go later to his sister's party in Orlando and to see his grandmother along the way. And you're going to hear he's here for a bit, and yeah, he's in contact with Isaiah Chance and Miss Andrews, I would suggest. But you can see he has nothing to do with this alleged shooting that takes place later. And unfortunately, people allegedly that he had contact with may have had other connections, but you're not going to see any connection between Mr. Guthright and what happens in these shootings later. And again, like I said many times already, you're not going to see any reason why he would have. It simply doesn't fit into that puzzle. Phone records. You may be asking yourself, well, the state just showed all these phone records where it was supposed to be at. And I think you're going to learn a lot about how phones work during the course of this trial, probably more than you ever wanted to. But you're going to see it's not quite as simple as I think the state would like you to believe as far as being able to tell where someone is based on these phone tower records. They're not that exact, and all they're doing is really telling us where a phone may be in a approximated area. Nothing pinpoints anything. And you see when you're, especially in a very populated area like this, you know, I left my phone at the table, but one of our phones could be hitting 3 different towers at any point right now. So these phones are not as precise as you may have been led to believe this morning, but you'll see that evidence, and you'll get to decide for yourself how much weight to give the phone tower evidence, and not even really how much weight to give it, but how much you can really read into the phone tower evidence. But it will show that, yes, Mr. Guthright is in Tampa, goes to his grandmother's in Polk County, and then moves on to Orlando to his sisters. Now, when he's at his grandmother's house, and I think you'll hear from grandmother, that's not unusual for him to do. She travels back and forth between here and New York, and she had just gotten back into town shortly before Mr. Guthright came to see her. You'll hear that it's not unusual for him to borrow her car. She knew that he worked. He was working this pressure washing business. He was trying to get off the ground, so that didn't faze her at all. She talked about the bags that are moved, and she again knows that he works in pressure washing, and she believes this is pressure washing. She's there watching him move the bags. It's not anything that's being done, secretly. So he lets her, or she lets him borrow the Forerunner, and as you saw, he cleans out the Impala, which I think she's going to tell you is something she expects to be done. She has some lung issues, and she wants that car to be clean. The other thing I think you're going to hear is that law enforcement later collects the rag that's used to wipe that down. So it's not like there's anything being hidden from the Impala being cleaned out. But in any event, yes, he switches cars, goes on to Orlando to hang out at the sister's party. When he's in Orlando, that's when you saw a photograph of the Don Julio bottle. I think you're going to see lots of Don Julio photographs because that's nothing unusual. You're going to see, I mean, you saw it in a couple of the videos this morning. Everyone seemed to be drinking Don Julio while in this case. You can read into what the meaning may be, and I think the state's going to suggest that it's some kind of material motive, but that's for you to decide. I'm going to suggest you it's a bottle of Don Julio in the closet, and you're going to see several of those. After Orlando, of course, Mr. Guthright returns back to Jacksonville. The traffic stop that you heard about that happens later on, Mr. Guthright is by himself when that happens. He's by himself, by the way, when he's gone to his grandmother's house, when he's gone to the party in Orlando. He's by himself when the traffic stop happens. There are numerous firearm-related materials found inside that car. And again, I told you his mother is an avid shooter, a former Marine. She has quite a few firearms herself. But I would suggest you the state at this point, or law enforcement rather, probably thinks they have now found this gold mine. Look at all these guns. They must connect back to Tampa. But they don't. And that includes a 9mm handgun that's inside the car. It doesn't match up to the shooting that took place in Tampa, even though they find 31 9mm casings. So one casing, or there are a couple of casings that apparently are matched back to casings that are found in a prior alleged shooting of Foolio. I think again would have been when he was a juvenile. But in any event, I want to emphasize, because you heard the word match used. Law enforcement is not saying and cannot say that these casings that are found in the car fired shots during the Foolio shooting. What they can say is allegedly, and I'm going to ask you to pay close attention to how casings are allegedly matched. I would suggest to you it is a very subjective science and it's questionable. But in any event, all it's saying is the same gun that allegedly was used in that shooting allegedly fired these. Not at the same time, not during the same incident. It's saying the firing pin markings on these casings were the same. Again, it does not say when those casings found in the foreground were fired, how they got there, anything of that sort. And again, it's mixed between numerous other firearms-related evidence that has nothing to do with this case. No connection to that case. Something else on that, by the way, and this probably goes without saying, but this prior shooting of Mr. Jones in Jacksonville didn't just ignore that. You're going to hear they had been investigating that. They were trying to get suspects. They were trying to obviously solve that crime that happened in Jacksonville. And again, all these detectives who were working that case never heard of Sean Guthright. No idea who he is. They made no connection between him and this prior shooting of Charles Jones. We jump ahead, as you heard, to a search that's later conducted at Mr. Guthright's home, his mother's home, and obviously where he went to. And there are many different types of ammunition, firearms found during that search. Again, this is a search of his mother's house and the mother's safe. And you may hear more about that safe and who had access to it and things like that. But suffice it to say, there are 2 rifles found. And I expect, again, law enforcement probably thought, oh man, we found the pieces to the puzzle now. But the problem, again, is nothing matches back to those rifles from the shooting that took place in Tampa. One of the rifles is what's called a 300 blackout. It's like a 30 caliber, and there are many, many rifles. Those of you who are familiar with many, many rifles fire a 30 caliber bullet, but a 300 blackout is more. There are no 300 caliber or 30 caliber bullets, I should say, at the scene. No projectiles that are found match back to that 300 blackout. In fact, every projectile that is compared to it was actually eliminated as having been fired from that 300 blackout. The other gun that's found, the 5.56, which is also 223 caliber, and can fire both cartridges. Several projectiles from the scene were eliminated from that one, and And there are some that the examiner can't necessarily eliminate, but can't match to that gun either. So, at best, one of them can't be eliminated as having fired the projectiles, but no projectiles are matched to either one of those guns. And as I expect you'll probably hear, similar to the 300 caliber, the 30 caliber, the 223 caliber, or 5.56, is also a very, very common size projectile that's fired in the firearm. Probably more so even than the 30 caliber. So the fact that projectiles were in that class doesn't really narrow anything down. So what is found that has relevance is allegedly there are two casings, again 9mm casings, that again are not matched to the shooting that took place in Tampa. They're matched to the same firing pin impressions as casings found in Tampa. You'll see in the videos, nobody runs back and collects shell casings with shooters. And only one of the shooters, by the way, is using a 9mm. Because the 9mm is a handgun. That handgun is never recovered, by the way. It's not found in any of these searches of Mr. Guthright's car, home. There's no 9mm found that matches this scene. But you'll see none of the shooters, and certainly not the one firing the 9mm, go back and pick up the rounds that would have been ejected from the gun. All this alleged match means is allegedly the same gun.
Judge, I'm going to object at this point to arguing.
Okay. I'm going to overrule the objection, and just remember again, ladies and gentlemen, this are the opening statements. This is what the attorneys believe the evidence will show. Okay?
I believe the evidence is going to show you that all that means is the same firing pin impression is found on the casings, those two in the house, and the ones found at the scene. And that's the most I can tell you.
Judge, I want to object. That's a misstatement of what the evidence will be. Counsel knows it. That's a misstatement.
Okay. Listen, again, I'm just going to remind everyone that what the attorneys say is not evidence, and you are not to take it as such. They're simply telling you what they believe the evidence will show. As the evidence comes in is when you all will determine what, in fact, the evidence is. Okay? All right. Thank you, Mr. Wise. Please proceed.
And ultimately, again, this goes back to the weight of the evidence that we talked about yesterday and that we've heard about today. You're going to decide how much weight to give that up. Okay. So, maybe Mr. Harmon believes that the evidence is going to show you something different than what I believe. But you're going to decide.
That comment, Your Honor, it's improper as to what I believe, what the representative of the state believes.
Okay. And I will sustain that objection. Okay?
So ultimately, ladies and gentlemen, it's for you to decide how much weight to give this evidence. Okay. You're going to see the evidence over the course of a couple of weeks. You haven't seen any evidence yet. You've heard us, and you're probably tired of hearing from us. I get that. But you're going to decide how much weight this evidence has. And I asked you, and that kind of transitions into what I was going to be saying next. Pay close attention to the evidence that you're going to hear of these next couple of things. Because there's a lot more to it than what you just saw this morning. Don't jump to any conclusions, and look at the whole picture. I'm going to give you a couple little examples. You saw these text messages this morning, Mr. Guthright's phone asking about someone named Fat Boy. I expect you're going to hear no one who was with Charles Jones that night knows who the heck Fat Boy is, or that there was any Fat Boy there. Again, there's a little more to it. Pay attention to the evidence. Look at those details. Don't jump to conclusions. You heard these, you saw these clips from X Spaces, where there's different people talking. I don't know if I'm sure everyone saw that, but you may not have been familiar with what X Spaces was. But apparently it's where a lot of people could talk to each other on the internet. And there's an allegation that allegedly Mr. Chance is saying something to Foolio about, who is Charles Jones, about how's your foot. Well, then there's an attempt to connect that back to Mr. Guthright because one of the Murphys allegedly texts him, "Hey, tell your boy to chill. We got bigger, I think it's a bigger S word to deal with, something like that." Well, again, look at the full picture. It's responding to Chance talking to Charles Jones, and the person saying it is saying we have bigger things, not Charles Jones. We have bigger things to worry about. So, in any event, just a couple of examples, but these are things I want to highlight so that you, again, remember, you haven't seen evidence, you're going to see a lot of evidence, pay close attention. I firmly believe, and I know once you do that, you're going to see Sean Guthwright's not guilty of any of these charges. And those are the verdicts of last year.
All right, very good. Mr. Gonzalez, on behalf of Rashad Murphy, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. May it please the court,
Yep.
counsel. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. You may remember my name is Brian Gonzalez, and I represent Rashad Murphy, who is seated next to Danny Hernandez, who is my co-counsel in this case. And next to Mr. Murphy is Billy Lane, our investigator that will be assisting us during the course of the trial. Rashad Murphy has been charged with premeditated first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit premeditated first-degree murder, and 3 counts of attempted first-degree murder. As Mr. Harmon has indicated to you, these 4 men who sit at that table right there as individuals are alleged to have followed, stalked, if you will, located Mr. Jones at the hotel, opened fire, hitting the Dodge Charger in which he was a passenger several times. That resulted in his death. Additionally, 3 other individuals, Camilla Bentley, Xavier Edwards, and Gino Norris, were wounded in that same hail of gunfire. These are individuals that had come with or along with Mr. Jones down from Jacksonville for this weekend of partying. Rashad Murphy has contended, ladies and gentlemen, from day one that he is not guilty of the charges that he has been accused of committing. And certainly that cannot surprise you because here we are. What Mr. Harmon indicated to you in his presentation about what occurred at the hotel and where the entourage with Mr. Jones traveled from one place to another did in fact occur. That is not a point in dispute, what occurred. The question, as you listen and as you receive the evidence over the upcoming days into weeks, we'll see how that goes, is did Rashad Murphy participate in this attack, and did he conspire with anyone to do so? What evidence, not what speculation, proves this to you? Because as I said, and as I will say, and as I will continue to say, these men are individuals, and you have to treat the evidence as such. I submit that, and I anticipate that there will be a wholly insufficient lack of evidence that will be presented by the state in this case in attempt to convince you that Mr. Murphy specifically is responsible for a first-degree murder and conspired with anyone in order to commit a first-degree murder. I'd ask you to pay very close attention to what the state in this case cannot show you in their attempt to to prove the elements of each of the offenses. And each of those offenses have different elements that you understand have to be proved. Primarily, Rashad Murphy's presence in Tampa at the time of the murder. I'd ask you to determine what evidence the state provides you and who will testify that Rashad Murphy made an agreement with anyone. Rashad Murphy was in Tampa at 4:40 a.m. on the 23rd, early morning hours of June 23rd. And how he Rashad Murphy attempted to assist another person in actually committing a first-degree murder. This prosecution, I believe, is rooted in circumstantial evidence. I don't believe you're going to hear that Rashad Murphy made a statement that implicates himself in a murder. I don't believe there's going to be testimony from an eyewitness that will identify Rashad Murphy as a shooter in this case, or a person in Tampa at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock a.m. through 4:40 a.m., the time of the shooting and the murder in this case. Remember, things that lead you to believe other things are dangerous. In order to find someone guilty of any crime based on circumstantial evidence, you must find that the indirect evidence is proof of one or more facts which you can find another fact. Don't be led to rely solely on inferences to support the necessary elements that are required by the law to sustain the state's burden of proof without carefully connecting the dots which unequivocally will become a period at the end of the sentence. Consider along the way the state's use of evidence and statements that say to you they did this or they did that during the balance of the trial over these next 2 weeks. Remember again that every defendant, Rashad Murphy, DaVon Murphy, Isaiah Chance, Sean Guthright, they're all charged with the most serious crimes that we have. And as you listen to the evidence, keep in mind that these defendants sit here again at the same table for the course of this trial, but evidence against them needs to be considered where it needs to be placed. What one may be guilty of, others may not. You promised us that you would consider this evidence applicable to each of them separately. I believe that the evidence is going to indicate that there were multiple groups, gangs, groups that the state will allege are gangs, criminal gangs who are rivals on many levels, and one of those levels is rap music, the rap music scene. You had the opportunity to hear and see 2 of those rap videos this morning. I anticipate there will be more. And they are alleged to tell a story of animosity, a mocking of each other, if you will, an acknowledged disrespect that runs very deep. What those rap videos will not tell you, ladies and gentlemen, I anticipate the evidence will show, is any indication that Rashad Murphy participated in a plan to kill Charles Jones or actually did so. As you listen to the evidence in this case, what the association of these rap videos that are performed by Spinabens, Young and Ace, Wappa with the Choppa, Fast Money Goon, Foolio, rap videos titled Who I Smoke, Foolio Dead, Game Over, as well as others I anticipate you'll hear, and what they have to do with Rashad Murphy, if anything at all. Those very videos that are meant to disrespect and provide a social media following that accentuate this disrespect, that provide a social media accounting of his death, in its aftermath, at a time when this death is already common knowledge in social media as well as news and print media. I anticipate that the evidence will indicate, as it relates to Rashad Murphy, nothing. Associations, remember, are not crimes. I also anticipate that you're going to hear from many of Charles Jones, Julio Foolio's entourage that traveled with him from Jacksonville for this weekend. They'll each tell you in their own respective ways, based on their own respective recollections, about the night of the 22nd of June that carries over into the early morning hours of June 23rd. You'll hear about the stops they made, and I anticipate that they will give you relatively minimal information about the actual shooting that took place. One thing I anticipate they won't be able to tell you is anything of substance as it related to who committed this crime. Their testimony, I anticipate, will not get you any closer to credible evidence about the perpetrators. And I anticipate that none of them will provide you testimony that they themselves are involved in any criminal gang, and that Julio Foolio is anything more than a successful rapper. One of those individuals I expect you to hear from is Robert Howard, also known on the street as Kenny Caps. Mr. Howard, I believe the evidence will indicate, is a close friend of Charles Jones, who traveled with him to Tampa. You'll note that he's on some of the advertisements that Mr. Jones puts out, Julio Foolio, for his performances and his weekend that he wants to draw social media attention to for his own particular purposes. I anticipate that you will hear that over a year after Charles Jones, Julio Foolio's murder, and after he gave a statement to law enforcement after this shooting in Tampa, suggesting to them that he knew little to nothing about the events leading up to and during the shooting. Lo and behold, he is in need of some help for himself and runs to the table to suggest that he had multiple communications with Rashad Murphy, both before and after the murder, that are relevant based on what weight, if any, you choose to give to Robert Howard under the circumstances. Again, your responsibility as to Mr. Howard, as it is to every witness that takes the stand in this particular case, is to judge that credibility, weigh it, and decide whether it's worthy of a small part, a significant part, or total belief, or no belief at all, if that's what you choose after hearing it and analyzing it. I believe you'll also be instructed that you should judge the credibility of those witnesses, including those who may seek benefit from that testimony. I would only suggest, ladies and gentlemen, that you keep an open mind during the course of this trial. Weighing that evidence from the witness stand, categorizing the inconsistencies that arise during the course of the evidence that I believe will become very apparent, along with other types of evidence as well. Evidence by way of pictures, by way of videos, by way of articles that were collected. All of those things are important in their own way, but you give them the weight that they deserve. And you place them in a category as to how they affect what is necessary to find Rashad Murphy guilty of one or any or all of these crimes. Not what weight you would give it or lack of weight as it relates to any of the other defendants that sit before you at that table accused of these crimes. I'd like to just take a minute to briefly talk to you about a couple of things that we talked about in jury selection. Of course, the first and one of the foremost tenets is the presumption of innocence. You know that all of these defendants, and in my particular circumstance, Rashad Murphy, is cloaked with that presumption of innocence throughout the course of this trial until proven otherwise. He does not have to show you a thing. The burden of proof, the single most important thing to find someone guilty of a crime, the burden of proof beyond and to the exclusion of a reasonable doubt, lies at the feet and at the table of the state of Florida. And you all have acknowledged in sitting here today that you respect that portion of the law and will abide by it. If Mr. Murphy chooses not to make himself a witness in this case, you have indicated to us unequivocally that you would not hold that against him and you would not wonder why. And on the other hand, if he chose to be a witness, you would give him the same credence and judge his testimony as you would any other witness. A witness who is a lay witness, and as importantly, a witness that is a law enforcement officer. It's my belief that one of the primary means that the state would intend to convince you that Rashad Murphy participated in the murder of Charles Jones, Foolio, and why he would do so will be through the testimony of multiple Jacksonville gang detectives. I believe at least 3. I believe that the evidence will show that their testimony, depending on what weight you choose to give it, is primarily based on opinion, speculation, hearsay from unnamed sources, and the fact that there were multiple prior shootings and murders over the years, many of which are unsolved, many of which there have been no arrests and no prosecutions to this day. On its best day, I anticipate the evidence will require you to speculate as to what Rashad Murphy thought, what Rashad Murphy might have planned, and what Rashad Murphy might have participated, all under the guise of whether this murder is in furtherance of some type of gang activity. The state has indicated to you in their opening statement many things that they expect the evidence to show. But again, as you saw that presentation, you have to begin to compartmentalize what you see and how it falls into a bucket of one. Make it make sense to you, ladies and gentlemen. Hold the state to providing you this evidence beyond and to the reasonable doubt, to the exclusion of a reasonable doubt, that Rashad Murphy was in the city of Tampa at 4:40 a.m. on June 23rd of 2024. Compel them to show you that Rashad Murphy was one of the three shooters, because that is what they allege, in those early morning hours, not by conjecture, not by speculation, not by opinion, but by facts and reliable evidence. I feel confident that after you hear the evidence, after you determine its weight as to the respective defendants in this case, and especially Rashad Murphy, that you will find that there is insufficient evidence that he conspired with any defendant in this case to commit a premeditated murder, nor did he commit it. The same would account for 3 counts of attempted first-degree murder. I believe that the evidence will also indicate to you that he's not a principal to any of these acts that were committed by others. Look for Rashad Murphy. Look for Rashad Murphy at every turn. Scour the evidence to locate him, to see him as you receive it during the course of this trial. After you review all of this evidence, I believe that you're going to return a not guilty verdict, because Rashad Murphy's liberty should not be at stake, and he should not be convicted of the acts of others that he cannot be legally held accountable for. Thank you.
All right, very good. Mr. Sonardi, on behalf of DaVon Murphy.
Thank you, ma'am. May it please the court?
Yep.
Ladies and gentlemen, jury, fellow counsel. Good afternoon. As you all will recall, my name is Nick Sonardi, and I am representing DaVon Murphy, who was sitting at the council table with me in conjunction with Deborah Toomey, who is also an attorney representing Mr. Murphy, and Scotty Sonardi, who we identified as related to me but not my son, and Katie Rain, who is our investigator. And on behalf of all of us, I want to extend to you our gratitude for your service. I know it's been a difficult task. You're asked to come in, sit down, go out, come back, and everybody's questioning you. And on behalf of the 5 of us, I want to extend to you our thanks. The court has said this over and over, but I think it's important. I know Mr. Harmon with the state was up, I didn't time him, but I'm going to say 3 hours, giving you what he believed to be the outline of the case that allowed the state of Florida to charge these defendants with the crimes with which they're charged. Again, over and over again, what the state says or what I say is not evidence. So simply because he was up here talking that long means absolutely nothing in the form of evidence. And I would ask, you keep hearing the name Murphy, and we've identified, obviously there's a Rashad Murphy and a DaVon Murphy, and I ask you all to please make sure that you keep those names separate throughout these proceedings. The court will instruct you at the close of all the evidence that you will have to make a decision based on individual facts or lack thereof as to each. And I'm concerned for DaVon that the name Murphy gets maybe brought up, and there may be some confusion as to which Murphy. So please keep that in your mind. So what are the facts of this case that the state outlined for 3 hours? And that is, we'll agree that on June 23rd, 2024, Charles Jones, known as Foolio, was in fact shot and killed at the Home 2 Suites in Tampa, Hillsborough County, Florida. As a result of that homicide, 5 people were originally charged: Isaiah Chant, Sean Guthright, Rashad Murphy, Alicia Andrews, and DaVon Murphy. That's why we're here, okay? And what was the motive for that homicide? The state alleges that it was a gang war, and it may well have been a gang war. They went through a number of individuals over the years, all the way back to, I believe, to 2018, and I'm not going to go through them all, but I believe they talked about Spaz and Bibby and Jake Jidd and Lou Hobie and Tilly and Mr. Jones himself, who was shot, that this was the background of the gang war that was going on. So that it's absolutely clear Mr. DaVon Murphy is in no way a suspect, a defendant, or anything to do with any of those homicides and the attempted homicide on Mr. Charles Jones, okay? It has nothing to do with DaVon Murphy. It has to do with the alleged gang wars between some gangs. So just make sure that that's clear. Also, the state, in its opening, went into the drill rap videos. Again, they're alleging that this is part of the motive for the death of Charles Jones, that these drill rap videos were dishing or being disrespectful to each other, and that's what caused part of the wars that apparently allegedly go back to 2018. We're talking about Spenna Bentz and Youngson Ace, and these are some of the drill rap performers, and some of which, but again, so that we're clear, this is part of the motive. And nowhere in any of those videos, those drill videos, is DaVon Murphy mentioned, a participant, name brought up, or anything. It has nothing to do with DaVon Murphy, okay? And I believe we're going to find out from the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office detectives, who are part of their gang enforcement unit. There's 2 or 3 of them. Each are just assigned to different particular gangs. I anticipate we're going to find out that none of them had heard of or knew anything about DaVon Murphy prior to the homicide of Charles Jones. All right. We'll have to listen to the detective's testimony, and I submit to you they had no knowledge of any involvement of DaVon Murphy in any gangs in the Jacksonville area up until the time of the death of Charles Jones. So what is the state's evidence? What is the state's evidence, or lack of evidence, as it applies to DaVon Murphy? They showed you part of a Tesla video. That's the video from the Tesla vehicle. They allege 3 individuals are the shooters, one of which they allege is DaVon Murphy. But in that video, you cannot identify anybody. The videos do show somebody doing some shooting, but we can't identify who the shooters are. Okay. So what is the evidence that the state hopes to convince you beyond the exclusion of every reasonable doubt that DaVon Murphy is somehow involved in the death of Charles Jones? There's the evidence from the Airbnb. All right, what evidence is there from the Airbnb? The state brings that up. The only time that you see DaVon Murphy at the Airbnb is when he's leaving. The day, it was technically still the 23rd, but in the later morning of the 23rd, that afternoon, that day, the 23rd, there is no video of who they allege Rashad Murphy as a participant in this homicide, and there is no video of Rashad Murphy at the Airbnb. So the only time that we see DaVon Murphy is leaving the Airbnb And earlier in the evening, prior to the actual homicide, we see him at the McDonald's drive-thru, the video that the state showed you on that. Recall that the vehicle that he's in is not the black Impala, but the silver Cruise. Okay? All right. The state mentions and goes through a long litany of the license plate readers, etc., that they allege that's evidence to try to convince you that DaVon Murphy is somehow involved in the homicide of Charles Jones. The license plate readers, number one, obviously you can't tell who's in the vehicles, number one. Mr. DaVon Murphy is not the owner of any of those vehicles, the silver Cruise. And we cannot tell, as I've indicated, who the actual occupants are of that vehicle. It's the state's speculation that it is, in fact, DaVon Murphy. Now, I believe the detectives will testify that although there was a Ring camera at the Airbnb, there was no camera in the rear portion of the Airbnb. We're not sure exactly who all was in the Airbnb. We know that Rashad Murphy allegedly is not in the Airbnb because there's no photos of him coming or going from the Airbnb. And what about the state touched on the security videos that came from the Teasers club? There's zero security video of DaVon Murphy at Teasers or at Truth 18. Those security videos where you see some of them walking up, and they showed you the video of Charles Jones. There's no videos showing that DaVon Murphy is at either one at Teasers or at Truth 18. The state, I believe, indicates that the occupants of the black Impala, the three individuals at the Home 2 Suites that exit from the black Impala, and those are the individuals the state alleges are the shooters. However, obviously, in any of the videos, you cannot identify any of the shooters that exit the black Impala. Again, they had the license plate readers that alleged that DaVon Murphy was again leaving the Airbnb, again driving the silver Chevy Cruise, not the black Impala. At no point in time do we ever see any video or anything whatsoever that places DaVon Murphy in the black Impala, which the state alleges transported the three suspects to the Home 2 Suites. The state also presented a lot of evidence that was recovered at Sean Guthright's residence. All the guns, the ammunition, etc., etc., etc. None of that whatsoever is in any way connected to DaVon Murphy. Okay, there is no evidence from that items that were recovered from Sean Murphy's residence that connect to DaVon Murphy, or that were in fact recovered from the gold SUV that Sean Guthright was operating. None of that, all those guns, ammunition, all that stuff, none of it ties back in any way, shape, or form to DaVon Murphy. Okay. What about the cell phone records? I believe the state talked about that. The important thing, the bottom line, the state in their opening showed you the history, not the history, but the cell phone records of how it hit cell towers, etc. All those towers. the state cannot show you any cell phone records that show that DaVon Smith was ever at the Home 2 Suites. Okay? There may be evidence of the other co-defendants or co-defendants that may have been present, but the phone records will show that DaVon Murphy was not at the Home 2 Suites at the time of the homicide of Charles Jones. Okay. So let's boil it down to what is the evidence the state alleges or is presented in the form of an opening statement that supports any accusations of a murder in the first degree, 3 counts of attempted murder, and a conspiracy to commit first-degree murder. Well, we have the video at McDonald's, so he went to McDonald's. We don't dispute that. And he was driving a silver Cruise, not a black Impala. What is the other evidence that the state alleges? Phone records. I'm not concerned about the other co-defendants. I'm only concerned about DaVon Murphy and his phone, although it does track from Jacksonville to Tampa, and then does go from Tampa back to Jacksonville that the state showed you. He was not at the Home 2 Suites at the time of the homicide of Charles Jones. Okay. What about the license plate readers that the state went into? All they show is the same thing. If you believe, and we don't know who's in that silver Cruise. We assume that it's DaVon Murphy, but all that shows is that a vehicle with that tag number was going back, came from Jacksonville to Tampa, and the next day returned from Tampa to Jacksonville. And what about the videos themselves from the Home 2 Suites? You can't tell who's who in those videos, okay? I mean, there you can see people shooting, etc., but obviously impossible to identify anyone in those videos. I believe the state showed you a quick excerpt of Mr. DaVon Smith when he was being interviewed at the Jacksonville jail, where he's shooting a gun, but we'll learn when that witnesses testified that Mr. DaVon Murphy was drunk and was playing to the music that was being played inside the interview room at the time that occurred. And again, I'm going to reiterate that at no time do any of the detectives from the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, gang detective, have any knowledge of DaVon Murphy. And I keep saying DaVon because I want to make sure that you all remember DaVon versus Rashad, that DaVon Murphy that any of those gang detectives had any knowledge of DaVon Murphy prior to the homicide of Charles Jones. So what does all this mean? It means that based on very weak, I submit to you, circumstantial evidence, the state of Florida has charged DaVon Murphy with count of first-degree murder of Charles Jones, 3 counts of attempted murder, and a conspiracy to commit murder. I submit to you there is no physical evidence whatsoever that connects DaVon Murphy to the death of Charles Jones. There is no DNA on all the projectiles that were found there, the ones that were found at Guthright. There's none. There's no fingerprints. There's zero physical evidence that connects DaVon Murphy to the death of Charles Jones. DaVon Murphy's phone exonerates him because his phone is not at the Home 2 Suites at the time of the homicide. There is no direct evidence or any direct testimony that links DaVon Murphy to the death of Charles Jones. The fact that he was present at the McDonald's and may have been present at the Airbnb is insufficient to make him a principal. Just mere presence is insufficient. And again, each and every one of you will have to determine the evidence as it applies individually to each of the defendants that are charged, okay? And we've all agreed before this that DaVon Murphy is not obligated to do anything. DaVon Murphy may determine whether he wants to testify or does not want to testify, and the judge will instruct you that you are not to consider the fact if he chooses not to testify in any way against Mr. Murphy. It is the state's burden, not Mr. Murphy's burden, to convince you beyond and to the exclusion of every reasonable doubt that he is somehow involved in the homicide or death of Charles Jones. I submit to you that at close of all the evidence, or a lack of evidence, or the conflict in the evidence, that you'll return a verdict as it pertains to DaVon Murphy of not guilty. Thank you.
Okay, very good. All right, state.
Just want to take a break.
Yes, we can. We sure can. So we'll take just a quick 5-minute comfort break, okay?
All right.
6th Street, and from Bush Boulevard all the way up to Fowler Avenue.
Now, I want to ask you specifically about June 23rd of 2024 and the early morning hours. Were you working on that shift?
Yes, ma'am, I was.
Where were you assigned approximately around 4 a.m.?
Roughly, we were at the Truth Lounge, which would have been about 48th and Bush Boulevard.
And when you say Truth Lounge, is that Truth 18?
Yes, ma'am.
And what jurisdiction or what county is Truth 18 located in?
It's in Hillsborough County in the city limits of Tampa.
At some point when you were stationed at Truth 18, did you receive a call regarding a hotel, Home to Suites, and the Holiday Inn located on McKinley?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
Approximately what time did you receive that phone call?
I believe it was about 4:40 in the morning.
And based on that phone call, what did you do?
They told us that there was basically someone shot. At that point in time, my squad responded priority up to Home 2 Suites.
And how you're dressed today, is that how you would have been dressed back then, in the same type of uniform?
Yes, ma'am.
And what sort of vehicle did you drive back in June of 2024?
At that, I had an unmarked Dodge Charger.
And you said that not only yourself responded to that location, but that your unit did, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. I had 6 officers working for me that night, and all of us responded there.
Okay. And were they in different vehicles?
Yes, ma'am.
And were any of those marked Tampa Police officer vehicles?
Yes,
Patrol
all of
vehicles?
those were marked.
Lights and sirens?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, before we go to that, what happened at the Home to Suites, I want to ask you, you said you were at Truth 18, is that correct?
That's correct.
When you were at Truth 18, were there any incidences or disturbances at Truth 18 while you were there?
No, ma'am.
Had you had any information that a rapper from Jacksonville was going to be there that night?
At that point in time in the night, no. We knew he was in the area, but not at Truth 18.
Okay. And so there was nothing that was alerted or out of the ordinary to your knowledge at Truth 18 while you were there?
No, ma'am. It was just the normal crowd that we were trying to keep control of.
And then after you received that call at 4:40 for shots fired, what did you do at that point?
Like I said, I left the parking lot near Truth 18, proceeded basically westbound on Bush Boulevard and then northbound on 40th Street towards the hotels.
How far is Truth 18 from those hotels, the Home to Suites and the Holiday Inn that are located on McKinley?
I'd say roughly about 3 miles.
How quickly were you able to get to that location?
I don't know, less than 2-3 minutes.
What did you see when you responded to that location?
As I was coming northbound on 40th Street towards Fowler Avenue, I saw a dark, like silver Hyundai coming, that would have been westbound on Fowler Avenue towards 40th Street. At that point in time, the vehicle decided to make a left-hand turn onto 40th Street, drive over the curb, and go into the parking lot.
At that point, did you know anything about that vehicle?
No, ma'am.
What was the information that you received regarding the shots fired call?
Basically, there's just somebody shot in the parking lot, and
And
possibly
so-
in the hotel.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No.
So when you saw that erratic behavior by that gray or silver Hyundai, what did you do?
I proceeded after that car thinking it would possibly be involved. At that point in time, I still had my lights and sirens on, tried to stop that vehicle. We drove to the south side of Home 2 Suites, then back to the west, and came all the way around near the Holiday Inn and pulled up in the parking lot and finally stopped.
Okay. And what happened when that vehicle finally stopped?
That vehicle stopped. There was a female that got out of the driver's side, a male and a female got out of the passenger side, and they started yelling about helping their friend who was in the vehicle to my right that I noticed that was all shot up.
Okay. And was that the first time that you had noticed that vehicle that had all been shot up?
Yes, ma'am.
And where was that located?
It was basically 10 feet away from where that vehicle stopped to my right.
Okay. And can you describe, I know that you said that there was a female that was yelling, as well as there were 2 other individuals. Was it, I think you said another female and a man, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Was there other units or other agencies that were responding to that location as well as officers from the Tampa Police Department?
Yes, USF PD showed up.
Okay. And what did you do at that point?
At that point, I listened to them. They said, the shots. I looked over at the car, noticed it had bullet holes in it. I went over to the car to check the person inside to see if there was any life or anything I could do for life-saving matters at that point in time. I noticed he was deceased at the time, and then saw a blood trail heading into the Holiday Inn.
And is that the standard protocol to focus on any sort of victims first?
Yes, we concentrate on life-saving efforts first and then go from there.
And can I ask you to describe the jury specifically? You said one victim, is that correct? Was there only one person in the vehicle that had the gunshot on the vehicle?
At that point, there was one subject in the vehicle. It was a male subject. It looked like he was going from the passenger seat into the back seat. He was laying down like between the center console and towards the back seat.
Was there anyone else in the vehicle or around the vehicle at that time?
At that point, no, all the doors were open and the vehicle was just him.
And you said that there were no signs of life, is that correct, from the individual that was inside the vehicle?
That's correct. He wasn't breathing and there's no pulse.
Okay. And then you said you noticed a blood trail, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Judge, at this time, the state's going to introduce into evidence State's Exhibit 22A through M, as well as 3A through P, and State Exhibit 6A through Q.
Okay, any objection, Mr. Gonzalez?
No objection.
Any objection, Mr. Sonardi?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Wise?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Petratus?
No, Your Honor.
They'll be admitted.
Sergeant Corman, I'm going to direct you to the screen in front of you, and I'm going to start with 6A. Can you see that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, can you describe for the jury what is being depicted in 6A?
The gray vehicle to basically the left of the black Dodge, that's the vehicle I stopped with the doors open. And
This
then
vehicle right here that I'm pointing to in the center?
Yes, ma'am. And then the black Dodge is with the broken out window, and you can see the bullet holes in the front of the windshield.
And where these vehicles are placed, is that where the Dodge vehicle was when you rolled up on the scene following this gray vehicle right here?
Yes, ma'am. I would have been, when I stopped that car, I would have been behind that gray vehicle and then walked up to that vehicle.
And is that exactly where the gray vehicle stopped when it returned back to the scene?
Yes, ma'am.
And you said that there were 3 individuals in there, is that correct?
That's correct.
Were those individuals later left with the USF Police Department while you and members from your unit responded to the hotel?
Yes, we proceeded into the hotel because at that point in time, we didn't know if there was an active shooter in the hotel because of the blood trail or what was going on. So I asked USF PD to stand outside with the 3 people that were outside and to secure basically the scene from where the deceased was at.
I'm going to show you 6B, a close-up of that black Dodge Charger. And is that, can you kind of see the individual in the red shirt right there?
Yes, ma'am. That would be the deceased and how he was laying in the vehicle.
And is what you described, is that correct?
Yes,
Kind
ma'am.
of in between the seats.
That is correct.
And then 6E, what's that?
It's the same vehicle with the deceased laying in the vehicle, just from the driver's side.
And then obviously 6F, these doors are open later after a crime scene is there, is that correct?
That is correct. I would have went in the passenger door on the rear side just to check on pulse and see if there's any breathing at that time.
And that's what you did in this case, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And other than check for pulse, would you have disturbed anything else other than to check for signs of life of the victim?
No, ma'am.
After you checked for signs of life, would the car have been secured and protected by Tampa Police Department until crime scene could respond to document everything as it was?
At first, USF PD, because I left them with it, and
Yes, sir.
then we took over and secured the whole crime scene so nobody else touched it.
And as well as until the medical examiner gets there as well, is that correct?
That is correct, ma'am.
And I think you said you made some observations of that Dodge Charger. I'm going to show you. Can you describe what's being shown in 6G?
It's just the rear of the Dodge, the busted out windows, and the shattered glass probably from the gunfire.
Did you make any other observations of that vehicle when you first rolled onto it?
No, ma'am. Other than, like I said, the blood trail leaving the car.
And where did that blood trail lead?
Led to the Holiday Inn.
Okay. And I'm gonna,
Hotel.
I know I previously showed you 3A through P. Was that a depiction of the different trail of blood leading from the car back to the Holiday Inn?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm gonna show you, can you tell us what's in 3A?
The Dodge vehicle that the deceased is in is to the left, and then you'll start to see the blood trail leave towards the hotel on the curb.
3B?
Just crime
I'm
scene,
gonna
crime
make-
scene pictures, and then number 1 and number 2 are showing where the trail's starting to go to.
Sergeant, if you need to stand up to point out something to the jury, you can.
Yes, ma'am.
And are they designated by where these yellow cones are then placed by crime scene?
Yes, ma'am. That's crime scene laying those out before they actually take the photos.
And then are close-ups taken so that you can actually see what you were pointing out? Is this what is being depicted in 3C?
That is correct, ma'am. That would have been, they do a farther back shot, and then they take a close-up, and then number 1 is where the first blood started
Is
from the
that right
vehicle. Yes, ma'am.
And then what is in 3D?
That will show, well, you can see the blood trails going up this way, so the droplets are pointed out heading towards the hotel.
And let me show you the close-up 3E. Again, can you point it out? Because I think this is a little bit better photo of that.
Yeah, I took a better photo. These are all the blood. And it's a little dried out from what it actually looked like the time that I was there in the morning.
And does crime scene take a photograph so that people can orient where the location of the picture is and then follow it up with a close-up?
Yes, ma'am.
What is being shown in 3F?
That's just gonna be the continuation. The number 2 droplet is down this way, and that's towards the hotel, so it's heading up the grass line towards the hotel.
And is that what's indicated with crime scene marker number 3?
Yes, ma'am.
3G?
Same thing, you see the droplets in the bottom corner.
3H?
Then you can see how the droplets are heading from 4 to 5. It's all these little drops that are heading all the way up towards the entrance of the hotel.
And then 3I, is that a close-up of marker number 4?
Yes, ma'am. It shows all the droplets again.
State 3J?
This is on this sidewalk pathway towards the hotel.
K, another photo to orient where 5 is.
Correct. And the front, you can obviously see the front of the hotel as far as the top end as it goes towards number 6.
Tell us what's in 3L.
See the heavy blood droplets that are continuing towards the front door of the hotel towards number 6. That's the Holiday Inn.
3M.
Is going to be the entryway into the hotel. And the droplets down by 6, and it continues on inside.
3-7.
This is going to be the entryway.
I'm sorry,
into
3N. I apologize.
It'll be the entryway into the hotel. You see the blood on the doors as they go in.
3O.
Yeah, it's just the entryway to the hotel.
And then 3P.
Be the entry into the lobby way to the hotel.
Now, you said after you determined that the victim was not breathing and there were no signs of life, that you and your unit responded to that hotel because of the blood trail, is that correct?
That's correct, ma'am.
How many people were with you at that moment?
Would have been 4 to 5.
And those were officers all with Tampa Police Department, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And was there a USF police officer who was tasked with staying there with those 3 individuals that were in the gray car that identified themselves as being with the victim?
Yes, ma'am. I believe it was a USF sergeant that I talked to that was on scene.
And so tell us what happened as you are responding up to that hotel.
Like I said, my officers went into the hotel right away because we didn't know what was actually going on inside the hotel after we saw the blood trail. They proceeded in, noticed the heavy blood trail inside, and there was a blood trail that goes all the way around the corner towards room 117 and also to the elevators.
As you are proceeding through that hallway, do you continue to see all of those blood droplets that are also on the floor inside of the hotel?
Yes, ma'am.
And are there individuals, guests that are in that area?
There's guests in the whole hotel, yes.
Are some of the guests coming out of the doorways or asking what's going on?
At that time in the morning, no, we didn't have anybody coming out other than when we knocked on certain doors to see if anything was going on inside the rooms.
And why were you knocking on certain doors?
Like 117 actually had a fingerprint on the door, so we thought one of the people that were injured possibly were in that room, so we knocked on that room, and those residents came to the door and said that there was nobody in there that was injured. So we figured that they proceeded towards the elevator and went up the elevator, so one of the floors.
Did you guys give me the photos back of the inside? Oh, I got them. Judge, at this time, we would introduce into evidence State Exhibit 4A through S.
Any objection, Mr. Gonzalez?
No objection.
Mr. Sonardi?
No objection,
Mr. Wise? Mr. Petratus? Be admitted.
Sergeant Portman, can you tell us what is in 4A? Let me zoom out.
Yeah, this is gonna be the lobby. That's the front desk for the hotel. That's the blood trail leading around to the hallway towards the elevators.
And this is the hotel, the Holiday Inn, correct? Not the Home to Suites?
Yes, the Holiday Inn, correct.
And then 4B?
This is gonna be entering into the hallway. Down towards the elevators are gonna be down to the right.
4C?
It's same part, it's just more of that hallway heading towards the elevators.
4D?
It's the hallway wall that's towards the elevators.
4E?
That's gonna be the one room off to the left is 117 that we actually checked on where all the blood's going to see if that's where the blood was actually at before you get to the actual elevators.
And you said that you did check to see whether or not anyone was injured in that particular room, is that correct, 117?
Yes, that's correct, ma'am.
And was there anyone that was located in that area?
No, ma'am. There was people in there, but there was nobody injured in there.
And when you say people, guests of the hotel?
Yes, ma'am.
No one bleeding when you made contact with them?
There was nobody bleeding inside that room.
And then 4F?
It's just gonna be in front of 117 and 119.
4G?
That's gonna be right in front of 119 of that room.
And then 4H?
is going to be the handle that I was talking about with the blood and the fingerprint on it.
And that's what alerted you to 117, is that correct?
That's correct. Like somebody tried that door handle, either trying to get away or trying to get help, one of the two.
4I,
This is going to be where the elevators start and the blood trail in front of the elevators.
4J,
That's going to be inside, I believe, the left-hand elevator that was in the last picture. And that's the inside of the elevator.
and did units then proceed to the other floors?
Yes, ma'am. Like I said, we actually believe because of all the blood and everything going on, there could be a possible active shooter. So we were clearing the whole hotel. I had officers going on every single floor. And then two of my officers, Officer Conaway and Officer Gale, actually got to the third floor and found two subjects on the ground actually bleeding heavily. And we're giving them medical assistance.
And what is in 4K? I don't think I asked you that yet.
That's this elevator one.
And then 4L,
It's going to be the blood on what floor. But it looks like they're trying to hit floor 4.
4M,
It's more of the same. It's the blood that was inside the elevator at the time.
and you said that two of your officers proceeded to the third floor, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And that's when they came into contact with who?
They came in contact with these two subjects that were actually shot and injured.
And did you yourself proceed up to that floor?
I did eventually just to check on them to see if they needed anything else. And then once I found out what they needed, started to get fire rescue in there to give medical attention.
And then is 4N, is that a photo of the third floor?
Yes, ma'am. I'd be coming out of the elevator, and that's where the subjects were at, is right there.
And when you checked on them, were those two subjects, did they appear to be, other than having been shot, were they still breathing and alive?
From my knowledge, yes, ma'am.
What did you do at that point?
After noticing that the hotel was basically safe or secure at that point in time, more officers started arriving on scene. I went outside to become the scene organizer, started getting crime scene tape up, having officers sit on every single floor in case people started coming out to basically secure this crime scene, and notifying our chain of command and getting the homicide unit to start heading to the scene.
And is that standard procedure that once a individual has been determined to be deceased, gunshot wounds, that the homicide unit would then take over the investigation?
If somebody is deceased on scene, yes, ma'am.
And you said that you did call homicide out there, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am, we did.
I also want to show you some of these pictures. I think you already looked at them. 2A, what is that a photograph of?
That's going to be the Holiday Inn where everything occurred.
And the ones that we have talked about, that blood trail, I don't think we saw the whole entire building, but is that the entryway where the blood trail was leading up to?
Yes, ma'am. That would be the entryway and then that sidewalk leading back to the car.
And can you tell us where is the Holiday Inn in relation to Home to Suites?
They're on the same block. If anybody knows Fowler and 40th, they're right there on either the southwest corner of that intersection. And the Home 2 Suites is sitting more towards 40th Street, and then the Holiday Inn is more on Fowler Avenue.
I'm going to show you State's Exhibit 2D. Do you see this photograph? Again, you can see the Holiday Inn, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. The Holiday Inn is off to the left.
And you can see the La Quinta, is that correct?
Correct.
And there is a roadway here. What roadway is there?
That would be Fowler Avenue.
Okay. And can you kind of orient us, like where you would go in this photograph to go back to where the Home 2 Suites is, where you originally came from?
The Home 2 Suites is going to be back over here, as 40th Street's this way, and then Fowler connects. So the Home 2 Suites is going to be here, and then the Holiday Inn is there.
Ms. Doherty, you say 2D?
Yes, Judge, this is 2D.
Has States 2 been admitted yet?
Judge, I believe I introduced,
No, Judge.
I didn't, I apologize, Judge. We would introduce into evidence States 2A through M.
No objection, Your Honor.
Mr. Sonardi?
No objection.
Mr. Wise? Mr. Petratus? Admitted?
I'm going to show you 2G. Again, is that a close-up of that same Holiday Inn?
Yes, ma'am.
And again, were there guests that were staying at that hotel when this incident occurred?
Yes, there was, ma'am.
At some point, did the manager want to try to clean up the crime scene?
Yeah, when I first entered the hotel, he was coming around the corner with a bunch of towels, and I had to tell him to stop.
Direct him that he was not to touch any of the evidence in that hallway, is that correct, or in
Yes.
the hotel?
Yes, ma'am. He wanted to clean up for the morning so that people coming downstairs didn't see it.
Did you do anything else in furtherance of this investigation?
Other than securing the other crime scenes in the morning, because we had multiple scenes going on, there was other people at the hospital, at Advent Health, there was another car on Fowler Avenue. It's just getting officers to those locations to secure those locations also.
So as a supervisor and a sergeant that was involved in this investigation, are you getting calls and briefed about other incidences that are connected to this?
Yes, ma'am.
So I first want to ask you about some of the other individuals at the hospital. Were you getting briefed on that there were other people that had received, or another person that had received a gunshot wound related to this case?
Yes, ma'am. Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office actually called into our dispatch and informed me there was another gunshot wound victim at Advent Hospital, and they had also stopped a individual there with a gun.
And is that because that Advent Hospital is in Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office jurisdiction?
Yes, ma'am.
And so based on that, they called Tampa Police Department because there was a connection to your investigation, is that correct?
That is correct.
Based on that, did you send officers from Tampa Police Department to respond to Advent Hospital so that contact could be made with that individual?
Yes, I did, ma'am.
And was that individual later determined to be Camilla Bentley?
I believe so, yes.
And you said that there was also, as part of that investigation, there was a vehicle, is that correct, that was also connected to the shooting that occurred where the victim was shot there at the Home to Suites and Holiday Inn area?
I can't say it was connected because I didn't do that part of the investigation, but there was a supposedly vehicle that was abandoned on like Fowler Avenue area or Fletcher.
You were
near the
alerted
hospital.
to that, is that
Yeah,
correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And as a result, did officers either from the Tampa Police Department, homicide unit, or others respond from your office to that location?
Yes, ma'am, they did.
Your Honor, may I have one moment?
Yes?
Your Honor, at this time, I'm sorry, Anna, did you say something? Your Honor, at this time, we pass the witness.
Okay, Mr. Gonzalez?
Good afternoon, Sergeant.
Good afternoon, sir.
Sergeant, you were surveilling, or your guys, your squad, part of your squad, was surveilling Truth 18 because it had been kind of a problem location, correct?
That is correct, sir.
Was this a normal surveillance activity for you guys on weekends or certain days?
I'll say it wasn't a surveillance. It was more or less trying to keep people out of certain parking lots because they would show up and cause problems and drinking in the lots and causing noise complaints that the citizens were complaining about. So we were addressing those concerns because we actually had trespass authorizations on those parking lots, so we're keeping those people out.
Right. Some of the units, though, were not actually in the parking lot, right, present and observable. Some of them were in different locations.
That's fair, yes.
Okay. And you also, at that time or during that point in time, had received an email from the intelligence section that Charles Jones, Foolio, was in town in Tampa, correct?
Correct.
And as a result of that, what is MDT?
It's just our message system on our computers.
Were you also being updated or provided intelligence or additional communications as it relates to Mr. Jones and potentially his whereabouts or where he was intending to go or where he had been?
Yes.
So the department, does everybody get those communications, the MDT communications?
Yes. Well, it just depends who's working that night. Because the MDT is a system that goes back for the dispatchers to officers.
Right.
So-
And everybody has access to it who's on duty at that particular time.
As long as their call sign's being used to talk. Because there's different ways of communicating on there. Either you can do a broad message to everybody in the department, or you can do individual officers.
Was there also law enforcement that were monitoring his social media activities as well?
One of my officers, Tyler, he actually knew of him and was monitoring it, yeah. It wasn't done by the department.
Do you know whether there were others that were monitoring his social media as well?
Not that I'm aware of.
Could there have been other members, either through Officer Tyler or on their own, or as maybe advised by someone else, that could have been monitoring that social media activity?
There could have been, yes, sir.
I don't have anything further. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Sonardi, any questions?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Wise, any questions? Mr. Petratus, any questions? Okay, State Redirect?
Just briefly, Sergeant Portman, is it unusual to receive intelligence from other jurisdictions, for instance, Jacksonville Gang Unit, as to intel if they have any information that known gang members may be in your jurisdiction?
No, ma'am, we get notifications from all kinds of jurisdictions all the time.
And that would just be to put you on alert or notice that something could happen, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And again, when you were stationed at Truth 18, there was nothing unusual or no disturbances happened at that time, is that correct?
That's correct, ma'am. It was the normal crowd that was there all the time.
Did you have any knowledge that Foolio Charles Jones had been at Truth 18 that night? Did you even know that?
At the time that this happened, no. Didn't
you-
find that out till the next day.
Okay. But while you were there was no indication that him or his group caused any trouble, is that correct?
No, ma'am.
All right. I have nothing further, Judge.
Okay, may this witness be excused?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Sergeant.
Thank
You're
you.
free to go. And Mr. Doherty, please make sure, since they've been admitted, that State's Exhibits 2, 3, 4, 6, and 22 are given to the clerk.
Yes, Judge. I'm giving one to you right now.
Okay?
Mr. Harmon's going to use two with the next witness, but the rest of them I'm giving over.
That's fine. Okay, who's the next witness?
State will call Officer Charles.
Madam Clerk?
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, Mr. Harmon, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. May it please the court. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Would you please state your name?
Officer Godcharles, Godcharles,
How are you employed?
with the City of Tampa,
How long have you been with the city of Tampa?
a little over 3 years.
Do you have previous law enforcement experience?
Yes, in Philadelphia,
What agency?
Philadelphia Police Department,
When you worked at the Philadelphia Police Department, how many years did you work there?
a little over 5.
Did you do patrol duties?
Yes, sir.
Were you certified under state of Pennsylvania guidelines as a law enforcement officer?
Yes,
And here in Florida, are you certified by state of Florida guidelines as a law enforcement officer?
yes,
Have you attended a police academy?
yes, in Philadelphia.
And did you have to attend some type of a transitionary academy here in Florida?
Yeah, I did equivalency of training in Florida.
Okay. Do you have to maintain annual and yearly qualifications
Yes,
to maintain your certification as a law enforcement officer?
yes,
I'll call your attention back to June 23rd of 2024. Were you on duty in the early morning hours?
yes.
Where was your patrol district or the area that you covered at that time?
I'm in District 2 and Sector C. It's near USF area, USF Tampa.
Would that include the area hotel complex at the corner of McKinley, 40th, and Fowler?
Yes,
Are you familiar with that complex?
Yes.
Did you have occasion to respond to that complex in the early morning hours of the 23rd of June, 2024?
Yes.
What was that in reference to?
It involved somebody being shot. It's a call for service for someone being shot.
Do you recall about what time you arrived?
Around 4:40 a.m.
Which entrance, or how did you enter into the parking lot or the hotel complex?
Off of 40th Street or McKinley on the southeast entrance.
At that time, were you assigned to the same position you currently hold?
Yes.
And what was that position?
Patrol overnights.
When you arrived there, were there other law enforcement officers on scene?
When I first arrived, there was a patrol car there, and there's other officers on scene.
Did you make contact with anyone when you first arrived?
When I first arrived, I found a police car, and then I was told to go to the Fowler side and then make contact with USF police.
Your Honor, state with tender states Exhibit 1 for entry into evidence.
Okay.
No objection.
Mr. Sonardi, any objection? Mr. Wise? Mr. Petratus? Aid be admitted?
Move to publish.
Yep.
Officer Gaunt Charles, did you enter into the complex through this southern entrance off of McKinley?
Yes.
When you entered into that part of the parking lot, which direction did you go in?
I entered and I ended up.
You can stand up if it will
Okay.
help you to demonstrate to the jury what you did.
So I entered at this southeast location, parked my vehicle near the Sally Port, and there was another vehicle, a police vehicle already here, so I was trying to find where the scene was. And after I was told it was on the Fowler side up north, I took my vehicle and went on the west side of the building around and parked in front of the Holiday Inn Tampa around here.
So if I'm following you, just for anyone who may not have seen it with a monitor, you came in, if you follow the tip of my pen, you're in this area here. You mentioned the Sally Port. Could that also be referred to as a portico or the entrance to the home to suites?
Yes.
And you said there was another officer in this area?
There's a police car there. I
Police
was looking
car.
for that officer because at that time I didn't know where the scene was.
And at some point, you are directed up here to this part of the complex,
Correct.
and you navigate around the west side of the complex to reach that area, is that correct?
Correct.
When you arrive on the north end of the complex, are there officers in this area here?
Yes.
On the north end between the, well, let me ask you, is this the entrance to the Holiday Inn that I'm pointing at?
That's another portico, but yeah, it's the entrance.
Were there officers between that portico going to the east and an area over where I'm circling where there may have been a disabled vehicle?
Yes.
Did you make contact with those officers?
Yes.
Was there a University of South Florida Police Department officer there?
Yes.
Did you make contact with him,
Yes.
speak with him?
Yes.
Did he offer to assist?
Yes.
Now, when you arrived, there was a disabled vehicle at some part of that parking lot, correct?
Correct.
Is that vehicle, does it appear to you to be a black and color Dodge Charger?
Yes.
Now, between that vehicle and the entrance to the Holiday Inn that I've just pointed out, was there another vehicle?
Yes.
What type of vehicle was that?
The Hyundai Sonata.
And did you make contact with some individuals that may have been near that vehicle?
Yes.
Was one of those Miss Turner?
Yes.
And was another one Miss Randolph?
Yes.
And was there a male Robert Howard?
Yes.
Did you make contact with all three?
Yes.
Did you speak with them?
Yes.
How long were you in that area?
So I got there around 4:40. I left around 6:30 a.m. So I'd say probably close to an hour, maybe 40 minutes in that area.
Were there other officers arriving during that time period?
Yes.
The area around the disabled black Dodge Charger, was that area secured by other officers?
Yes. I probably spent less time up front. I think my total time there would probably be an hour or so. I'd say probably maybe 30 to 40 minutes up there with them. But I also spent a decent amount of time later south.
Did there come a time when you were summoned to a different part of the hotel complex?
When I first came in, I was summoned to the Fowler side. I later went looking for the fired cartridge casings. At that point in time, we hadn't found any.
Okay. So when you went to look for those, did you do that on your own volition, or did someone ask you to do that?
I spoke to my Sergeant Portman, who said that we hadn't found it, and I volunteered to go look for it.
Okay. Did you go to another part of the complex?
Yes.
What part of the complex did you travel to?
So I went east and then south along the Home 2 Suites by Hilton, and then found the fired cartridge casings near that portico, near where I initially parked.
So when you said you went east, were you parked generally in the area where the tip of my pen is, over here by the entrance to the Holiday Inn?
Yes.
Did you travel along this north end of the parking lot?
Yes, I've traveled by foot.
Oh, you traveled by foot, not in your car?
Correct.
Okay, so you would have walked to the east. Did you then walk to the south along the eastern edge of the Home 2 Suites?
Correct.
And then around to the south end of the Home 2 Suites?
Correct.
In this area here, I believe you've already told us is an entrance to that hotel?
Yes.
When you got to that area, you said you were able to locate shell casings?
Yes.
Did they appear to you to be shell casings that were consistent with being fired by a handgun?
Yeah, they were pistol casings.
Did you ever have a chance to look at them or bend down with a flashlight to determine what caliber they were?
I know I determined that they were smaller in pistol size. I wasn't able to see the exact caliber.
When you arrived in that area, did you also notice any damage to that south end of the Home 2 Suites?
One of the windows was shattered.
Your Honor, we would tender states 5A through Y for admission into evidence.
Any objection, Mr. Gonzalez?
No objection, Your Honor.
Mr. Sonardi?
No objection.
Mr. Wise? Mr. Petratus? Admitted?
Publishing states 5A is an alpha. As you arrived on foot down the eastern side of the Home 2 Suites, would you have arrived in this area here where my finger's pointing at the bottom of that photograph?
Yes, that's the south end portico.
And the area to the lower left third of the photograph, would that be the actual portico and the entrance to the hotel?
Yes.
States 5B is in Bravo. As you walk across that southern end, would you see what's reflected in this photograph?
Yes.
And this again would be the portico?
Yes.
States 5C, just to the east, southeast of the portico, did you notice some items laying in the street?
Yes, it appeared to be plastic pieces from a car accident, like a fender bender.
So would it be fair to say those would have been consistent with two cars colliding?
Yeah, it looks like a minor accident. The pieces of plastic would come off of a car.
States 5D is in Delta. Does this photograph reflect the windows on the south side of the hotel and the portico that were damaged?
Yes, it should be the third one on the right.
So third from the left or third from the right?
Third from the left.
From the left. So here?
Yes.
Did you later enter the hotel to investigate that damage?
Yes.
What is on the opposite side of the windows?
There was like a white blind and then a gym inside of there.
A gem?
Yes.
States 5E is an echo. Now, in this photograph, is the camera facing back to the east with the portico on the left of the photograph?
Yes.
States 5F. Does this photograph appear, does the camera that is recording this photograph appear to be facing north, just north, slightly northeast?
Yes.
And is the western side of the home to suites reflected in that photograph?
Yes.
Now, what appeared to you to be pistol caliber shell casings that you found, do you see an area reflected anywhere in the photograph where some of those casings were located?
It would be in front of that white Lexus and then
Right.
to the right of the white Lexus.
Okay, so just off the right side of this photograph.
Correct.
States 5H is in hotel. Would that area then be to the right of the front of the vehicle?
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. States 5I is in India. Does this photograph depict underneath the portico?
Yes.
Officer, from the time that you arrived, did you take precautions and efforts to secure that area where you saw the shell casings?
Yes.
And approximately how long were you in that area of the complex?
I'd say probably another 40 minutes.
Another 40 minutes from the time you got down there?
Estimated, yeah. So from 4:40 to 6:30 is my extent of the call.
So when you say your extent of the call, at 6:30, do you leave the scene?
Yes.
While you are there from 4:30 to 6:30, are there at times guests of the hotel attempting to leave?
Yes.
And do you take precautions to escort them around any potential evidence?
Yes.
Are there employees of the hotel arriving possibly for day shift?
Yes.
And do you, again, take precautions to try to keep them out of the scene where there may be potential evidence?
Yes.
States 5, Y is in Yankee. Does this photograph, again, depict that apparent automobile collision damage evidence?
Yes.
Okay. And at this point, are the items marked with yellow cones?
Yes.
Are those items that you recognize and have seen before?
Yes.
Are they items that are utilized by crime scene investigators or technicians to document a crime scene?
Yes.
have one moment, Your Honor.
Yes.
May I approach the clerk, Your Honor?
Yes.
You mentioned earlier, Officer Godcharles, that you had entered the home to suites and at some point had gone into that gymnasium area behind the window damage.
Yes.
Were you searching for something or investigating anything?
I was looking for bullets or bullet fragments.
Did you find anything?
No,
How long were you in the gym?
less than 10 minutes.
Did you meet with a manager or some employee by the front desk?
An employee let me into the rooms.
The damage that you saw to the window, did it appear to have been caused by a firearm or fire from a gun?
It looks like a bullet struck the window frame and shattered the glass.
You have one moment, Your Honor.
Yes.
Your Honor, I'll tender the witness for cross.
Mr. Gonzalez?
Officer Godchild, did you interview witnesses?
Yes,
And those would have been the witnesses that were inside the Hyundai?
yes,
One of those witnesses was Robert Howard, correct?
correct.
And you have previously described your interaction with him as him being dismissive, correct?
Your Honor, I would object.
What's the legal basis?
Hearsay.
You can answer that question, but you can't get into the substance of what the interview was. You can answer that question.
Could you restate the question, please?
You've indicated that Mr. Howard was dismissive of your interview with him, correct?
I believe I said he was uncooperative.
Without getting into what information, did he provide you any information about the shooting?
Objection, same objection, Your Honor.
You can answer that question, overruled.
He stated that he heard
All right,
gunshots.
listen, don't tell us what he said. The question was, did he provide you any information about the shooting, yes or no?
Yes,
Was that information extensive or general?
Objection,
I'm going to
hearsay.
sustain the objection as to that question.
Did you speak to Adjoya Randolph as well?
yes,
Would you characterize that interview essentially the same as it relates to Mr. Howard's attitude?
yes,
Did you also speak to Armani Turner?
yes,
Would you characterize that interview of much of the same that you encountered with Mr. Howard and Ms. Randolph?
yes,
Did Mr. Howard, without telling me what, did Mr. Howard provide you with any information concerning anything other than what occurred that night?
Objection.
I'm going to sustain the objection.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Okay, Mr. Sonari? Any questions?
Officer Godcharles, the bottom line is pursuant to your interview Howard, Randolph, and Turner, they were uncooperative. Is that yes or no?
I would say yes. Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Wise?
No question.
Mr. Petratus? Okay, very good. Redirect?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, may this witness be excused?
He may, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you, sir. You are free to go. All right, state, use your next witness.
They called Officer Zachary Conway.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
All right, you may proceed.
Good afternoon, officer. Would you state your name for the record, please?
My name is Zachary Conway.
And how long have you been employed with the Tampa Police Department?
This will be my 4th year at Tampa Police Department.
Prior to your employment with TPD, did you have any other law enforcement experience?
Yes, prior to Tampa Police Department, I was also employed with New Orleans Police Department for about 5 years as well.
And in that capacity, did you have an opportunity to investigate a variety of types of crimes?
Yes, ma'am.
On the early morning hours of June 23rd of 2024, were you working in your capacity as a Tampa Police Department officer?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you receive a call for service that you responded to about 4:40 a.m.?
Yes, ma'am.
What was the nature of that call for service?
The initial notes that we got were vehicles circling around the parking lot of a Holiday Inn at the intersection of Fowler Ave and McKinley Drive, and additional callers revolving around told us that there were also gunshots that were also heard in the area as well.
Now, prior to your receiving that call, earlier on your shift when you had your briefing or your original meeting with the rest of the members of your unit, had you received some information about a particular musical artist coming to Tampa?
Yes, we did.
And did that information also include potential risks or of harm associated with that person coming from opposing groups?
Yes, ma'am.
With that information, did you specifically do anything?
Myself specifically, no.
Did other members of your squad do something?
Yes, ma'am. Officers Costanzo and Officer King tried to maintain surveillance on the person that was mentioned in the emails, just to keep an eye on him throughout the night.
And those are other members that also work with the Tampa Police Department?
Yes, ma'am.
By utilizing this information that you had received, what was the purpose?
It was basically just to get ahead of anything that might happen. All that we were really told was just that the victim, Mr. Jones, had I guess bad relationships with some other local groups as well.
Now, the information you actually did receive, did it specifically identify the individuals that Jacksonville Sheriff's Office were concerned about that were coming to Tampa opposing the victim?
Opposing the victim, not exactly. The only person I remember being specifically mentioned by name in that email was Mr. Jones.
And once that information had been received by you all, did you continue about your shift in the regular course of your duties every day that you normally would?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, once you received the call for service, did you actually respond to the Home 2 Suites?
Yes, ma'am.
Are you familiar with that area?
Yes, ma'am. It was my zone for about 2 years.
And did you know where to go at the time that you had actually arrived?
Yes. Based on the Based on the information that we got in the call, I circled around behind the Home 2 Suites, behind the Holiday Inn. It's just one giant parking lot that encircles the entire, complex. You have 3 different hotels in that area. And by the time I circled around to the front, which is where I ended up meeting with Sergeant Portman and Officer Godcharles, that's also where we found Mr. Jones.
Now, you described a little bit of the layout of the hotels. Did the 3 hotels shape almost a U?
Yes, ma'am.
But the parking lots themselves are all connected.
Correct.
When you actually get to the area that you see Sergeant Portman or Mr. Jones's vehicle, did you have an opportunity to see the vehicle that Mr. Jones was in?
Yes, it was a black Dodge Charger. It was stopped in the middle of the lane of travel in the parking lot in the northeastmost corner of this parking lot, right on the intersection of McKinley and Fowler Ave.
And was that the resting place that vehicle was from the time that you arrived and then ultimately when crime scene got there to process it, et cetera?
Yes, ma'am.
Upon arrival, what observations of the vehicle itself did you make?
Multiple bullet holes going through the front windshield as well as through the body of the car. When I inspected the vehicle and even more, that's when I found Mr. Jones inside.
And were you able to, or were you tasked with doing anything at the vehicle, or did you have another assignment?
I wasn't tasked with anything specifically at the vehicle itself. Sergeant Portman initially told us to go ahead and start securing the scene. I went back to my car to get crime scene tape. Upon coming back, and I handed the tape off to another officer, I can't remember who, but that was when I noticed the blood trail going from the vehicle that Mr. Jones was found in, going to the front of the Holiday Inn.
Based on the injuries that you observed at the vehicle to Mr. Jones, or the observations you made of that vehicle, did you believe that another individual or other individuals had then made that blood trail towards or into the hotel?
Yes. From the way that Mr. Jones was positioned in the car, it looked as if he was originally seated in the front passenger seat, and during the incident, he had tried to move from the front passenger seat to the back seat. He was positioned directly over the top of the center console with his head facing towards the back seat, while his legs were still in the front seat, in the front passenger seat area.
As you look away from that vehicle and back towards the hotel, is that the direction at which you see the blood trail leading?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you and other officers with your department have an opportunity to follow that trail?
Yes.
Where did that lead you, at least from the vehicle to the interior of the Home 2 Suites?
The blood trail initially went from the vehicle that Mr. Jones found in, through the sidewalk down the sidewalk to the north of Holiday Inn, through the front door, through the lobby, and then turned east down the first floor hallway, stopped maybe about 3 or 4 doors down, then circled back and came back to the elevator, and that's where we followed the blood trail to.
And during this time, are you also seeing blood not only on the ground but on the doors and the walls?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you know whether there is still an outstanding shooter at the time that you and the other officers actually make entry into the hotel following this trail?
At that time, that was a possibility.
Did you have an opportunity yourself and with the other officers to then make your way to the 3rd floor of that hotel?
Correct.
And did you utilize the elevator to do so?
Yes, we did.
Upon exiting the elevator, what were the observations you made?
As soon as we exited the elevator and turned immediately to our right towards the main hallway, that was when we found the other 2 victims, Mr. Edwards and Mr. Norris, directly in front of us at the T-junction of the hallway.
Now, at the time you initially responded, did you actually know the identity of the individual in the vehicle or the individuals that were on the floor, Mr. Edwards and Mr. Norris, or is that information you later learned?
That was information that we confirmed later on.
And at the time that you responded, were you equipped and Officer Gale equipped with a body-worn camera?
Yes, ma'am.
Having shown the defense states exhibit number 91, the state seeks to admit states 91, Your Honor.
No objection?
Mr. Sonardi?
No objection.
Mr. Wise?
No
Mr.
objection.
Petratus?
No objection.
Be admitted.
Sir, are you able to see what's depicted in states number 91 here?
Yes, ma'am.
And is this the observation that you made when you exited the elevator towards your right?
Correct. That's Mr. Norris laying down on the right in the black hoodie and black sweatpants. That's Mr. Edwards, and Mr. Norris is the gentleman in the white shirt and blue jeans on the left.
Okay, so allow me to clarify. The individual to the right in this State's Exhibit 91 is someone that you later identified as Mr. Edwards,
Correct.
and the individual on the left was someone you later identified as Mr. Norris.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, when you first make contact with these two individuals, what are the observations that you make about their persons?
Obviously, observed the injury to Mr. Norris's right shoulder there. Officer Gale immediately started to tend to him, placed a tourniquet on his arm.
Could you immediately tell that the injury to Mr. Norris was a gunshot wound based on your training and experience?
Based on my training, yes. And also just from the amount of blood, that's pretty typical with gunshot wounds in my experience.
And is that paired with what you saw outside of the hotel before you actually came up?
Correct.
And the injury to Mr. Edwards, if you recall?
Mr. Edwards told me that he had been shot in the upper right arm. Just based on the amount of blood, his whole right sleeve on his hoodie was completely soaked in blood. So he basically he pointed to where he had been shot. It was kind of the upper right arm, and that's where I placed the tourniquet up as high as I could into his armpit.
Could you see when you're actually placing that tourniquet how many gunshot injuries there were at that time?
I counted 3, right exactly where he pointed to them in his upper right arm.
You indicated that you applied a tourniquet. Can you just explain for the jury what that is?
Tourniquet is just a device that we use in order to stop heavy blood loss. Typically, you try to do it you try to place it as close as you can to any major arteries as you can, so you can try and stop the flow of blood so as they don't pass out or expire from blood loss.
Did you specifically apply one to Mr. Edwards as well?
Yes, ma'am.
And before actually even making these medical rescue efforts, did you search the individuals that you located on the ground, Mr. Norris and Mr. Edwards?
Yes, I did pat down Mr. Edwards for any weapons. I didn't find anything on him, and Officer Gale did the same for Mr. Norris.
And there were no weapons of any kind located?
No, not that we found.
Now, did you also stand by and attend to both of these individuals while you waited for EMS to arrive?
I was primarily focused on Mr. Edwards, while again Officer Gale was dealing with Mr. Norris.
So you just divided up your attention. Each of you took one of the victims.
Right.
When you attempted to speak to Mr. Edwards, was there any kind of response, or was there difficulty responding? Tell me about the communication you were actually having.
I was trying to figure out. While I was trying to talk to Mr. Edwards, trying to at least keep him conscious and to try to get some more information as far as what had happened, I was able to confirm that he was the driver in the vehicle that we had found outside, that they had been shot at. But as far as who did it or any kind of description as far as who had done it, I wasn't able to get that on scene. He was periodically starting to lose consciousness while I was still trying to talk to him on scene.
What was Mr. Norris's demeanor?
Mr. Norris, he was in pain, but he was also calm when speaking with Officer Gale. The most I could overhear from his conversation with Officer Gale was that he was in the back seat of the vehicle at the time of the shooting, and he had been asleep when it occurred.
That same vehicle?
Yes, ma'am.
The black Charger?
Correct.
And this is while they are excited and making these statements to you?
Yes, ma'am.
When you first got off of the elevator, was Mr. Edwards screaming?
Yes, Mr. Edwards was screaming.
When you first got off of the elevator, was Mr. Norris screaming or crying?
I believe he was crying when we got off the elevator, yes.
Despite having applied a tourniquet to Mr. Edwards' arm, he was still losing consciousness while you were there with him?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you ultimately later respond to the hospital after both victims were transported to Tampa General?
Correct.
And were you able to ascertain that there were additional injuries to Mr. Edwards, not just the 3 shots you saw?
Yes, ma'am.
And were those additional gunshot wounds?
Yes. Tampa General staff told me that there were 3 additional gunshot wounds further up on Mr. Edwards' shoulder that I couldn't see because of the hoodie.
You also had contact with Mr. Edwards at the hospital as well?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you have an opportunity during your contact with Mr. Edwards to complete a full interview with him?
Yes, ma'am.
Was he still being treated by medical staff?
Yes, he was still in the process of being treated.
And did you inquire with Mr. Edwards about his events or the events that he had been involved in for that evening?
Yes, ma'am.
Was he responsive to your questions?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you inquire with him about the information you had from the flyer, so the specific locations that you believed victim Charles Jones to have gone that evening?
Yes, ma'am.
And was Mr. Edwards responsive to those questions?
Yes, ma'am.
When you inquired about what actually happened at the hotel itself, was Mr. Edwards also responsive to what happened at the Home 2 Suites?
Yes, ma'am.
After the transport of Mr. Edwards and Mr. Norris to the hospital, before they were transported, were their clothing items required to be removed?
Yes, on scene, TFR personnel removed their clothing on scene.
And were you still standing by for that event?
Yes, ma'am.
After they had been transported, did those clothing items remain there at the place that you actually found Mr. Edwards and Mr. Norris?
I believe so. They did not have those items at the hospital when I spoke with them.
I'm going to show you what's already been admitted as states 4 in. Can you see that okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Is this the observation that you made when you exited the elevator to your right, absent the victims that were placed there?
That's correct.
And in 4-0, having started the process, it would appear, of crime scene going through this.